New tonight on our news, live at 7, a crime consultant revealing 653 people are being electronically monitored. More on the startling figures, including the hundreds out on bail. But first, a plane crashes off Andros with 5 people on board. What we know so far from investigators. Plus, the latest on that promised teachers' industrial action as officials move into damage control. And then in our news at 7:30, U.S. Embassy officials commemorate Pride Month amidst divergent local reactions. Our news live at 7 starts right now. Welcome to our news live at 7. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. We are learning of a plane crash just 10 miles off Andros that's been reported this afternoon. Law enforcement telling us, in fact, the Air Accident Investigation Authority telling us, they got word of the crash shortly after 3 p.m. today. They say 5 people were on board. Officials said the single-engine Piper PA-32 aircraft with United States registration was en route to West Palm Beach International Airport when the pilot encountered issues and attempted to return to Andros. The U.S. Coast Guard and both the Royal Bahamas Defense and Police Forces, we are told, are involved in the investigation. This is a story that we are continuing to follow. Be sure and stay tuned to ournews.bs. And now to the issue of bail. Tackling the issue of bail, we're learning that the consultant in the Ministry of National Security, Dr. Carlos Reed, is reporting that out of the 128 murders last year, 47 of those killed were on bail for murder. He says there are currently 653 people being electronically monitored, and of that number, 413 have been charged with murder, which he says begs the question as to when those individuals will be brought before the courts.
I hear people all the time when we talk about the Bail Act, that we need to amend the Bail Act. But how can you amend the Bail Act when the courts are there to protect the constitutional rights of the citizens, which says that a person is entitled to bail if they're not brought to court in a reasonable amount of time? So we need to find a way, how do we deal with the over or the backlog when it comes to persons that have been charged before the courts?
As for a solution, Reed says police, the Attorney General's office, and the Ministry of National Security are currently engaged in dialogue.
How do we put our collective resources together, and how do we deal with the situation that we face? There's no quick fix to what we face with. This is a real situation that we're in, and we got to not just put band-aid approaches to this, but we need to be able to get to the meat. So when we roll out some things, we're rolling out things that are not just to satisfy people's emotions, but things that actually have an opportunity to work.
A driver whose passenger died during a traffic accident has lost his appeal against his conviction for killing in the course of dangerous driving. McFarland Bowleg has to pay a $10,000 fine to avoid spending 18 months in jail for causing the death of Elwood Lundy, his uncle. According to the prosecution, Bowleg ran the red light at the juncture of Mackey and Shirley Streets and collided with another car on March 22, 2020. His uncle, who was a backseat passenger, sustained head injuries as a result. The Court of Appeal determining that the finding of guilt by the magistrate could not be faulted. And Bimini police arrested 3 men ages 23, 49, and 60 years old after they were reportedly found with marijuana. The arrests were made after 4 p.m. on Wednesday after officers from the Allenstown Police Station and Drug Enforcement Unit executed a search warrant at a home in Porgy Bay. During that search, officers say they found a large stash of marijuana and confiscated $20,000 believed to be the proceeds of crime. The weight and value of the drugs unknown at this time. Investigations are said to be ongoing. U.S. Embassy officials kicking off Pride Month celebrations with the raising of the Pride flag at the U.S. Embassy and the ambassador's residence, Liberty Overlook. The embassy is supporting events throughout the month of June to celebrate the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex, that's the LGBTQI+ community. Events include a film screening, a safe space chat on inclusion issues, a diplomatic reception, and social gatherings. U.S. Charge d'Affaires, Usha Pitts.
During Pride Month in June, we celebrate the LGBTQI+ community. We invite every Bahamian to enjoy the blessings of liberty and life in a free society. And of course, we encourage you to take pride in who you are just as you are.
All right, and be sure and stay tuned to our news at 7:30. We've got reaction to this story coming up. We've got much more to get to in a moment, but for now, it's time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with your first look. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kendi. Of course, today is June 1st. It begins the official 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. These are the numbers we have for you right now. Averages of 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 of those are Category 3 or higher. 2 agencies that we normally use, NOAA and Colorado State. NOAA giving a spread of 12 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 of them hurricanes, 1 to 4 becoming a Category 3 or higher. Colorado State 13, 6, and 2. Of course, we are close to averages with the Colorado State, so looking for an average season or slightly below average. But of course, you only need one system to spoil your hurricane season. The names now for the upcoming season: Arlene, Brett, Cindy, Dawn, and of course they go all the way to Whitney. We've replaced 4 names in the rotation: Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate. The reason why we do that is because of the destructive forces these systems caused last season. So the new names will be Harold, Adalia, Margot, and Nigel. Talking about the tropics, we are tracking a system out there in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. Not quite impressive, some convective activity trying to get itself started. But we have some upper level shear, and we still have a lot of moisture moving across the Bahamas. So we got to see a couple of isolated showers. But this system is going to meander across the northeastern Gulf of Mexico over the next couple of days. And it's actually in some very warm waters. But it's going to run into some increasing upper level shear. And that's going to keep a lid on the system as it drifts towards the south over the next several days, possibly even into next week. It should be my Cuba, but we don't expect the system to do much in terms of any significant damage. But of course, today is June 1st, and hurricane season runs through November 30th. This is a good time to get your hurricane plans together if you haven't already done so. That's a look at our weather. We get back to the forecast later on in the newscast.
Still to come in our news, the acting education director says teacher concerns are being addressed by the ministry as industrial action looms. This as a new school diploma criteria takes effect this month, and why the opposition leader says government must involve stakeholders before making decisions on Grand Bahamas' future. The story when our news continues.
If new, Heineken Silver was a riveting Viking saga.
Lars the 12th, your family tortured my first wife and stole my second favorite goat. Now you want to marry my daughter. Okay.
All the taste, no bitter endings. Smooth, fresh, silver.
We've got the latest on the Bahamas Union of Teachers' industrial threat action as education officials are responding tonight. Joshua Williams has the story.
Days after threats of industrial action by the Bahamas Union of Teachers over allowance payments and human resource matters, Acting Education Director Dominique McCartney-Russell says payment is on the way.
I would have already spoken to our team in accounts, and so we would have already been advised that those teachers will be paid those responsibility allowances. Some have been paid already, and they are now going to pay the remaining ones.
With the summer break approaching, the BUT has expressed frustration on the time it's taken to address these issues. McCartney-Russell says these matters take time as there is a process.
It does take time to get some things done because of the bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy is not just at the headquarters level. You know, we have to obtain the information. We have to check the information from our team members on the ground. And then, of course, we have to advance it to accounts for payment. And that process takes a while because we've already said it before, sometimes a lack of staffing or the absence of staffing because of sickness. And so it is hoped that, you know, in good faith, unions would work with us.
And as it relates to staffing issues, Wilson says the union made many recommendations on how the ministry can go about resolving the matter. McCartney-Russell says those recommendations have been received and steps have been taken to get more staff.
We still have a shortage of staffing, and it is due to resignations, it's due to retirements, and we have not been as quick to replace them. And the reason we have not been as quick to replace them is because it is a process. We are not an organization unto ourselves. We actually have to send our documentation to the Ministry of the Public Service. We have to make sure that they are vetted. You know, that takes a long time to get people vetted. It is a long process in terms of ensuring that we get quality persons in the Ministry of Education. But we're seeking to digitize HR and digitize some of our processes so that we would have a short turnaround.
Russell says the goal is to digitize HR to avoid issues going forward. Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
And changes are coming to the National Diploma based on some recommendations. Those recommendations by the Bahamas High School Diploma National Review Commission. Since its inception in 2014, some students have not been able to receive diplomas based on the previous 8 requirements, which include examination passes, cumulative grade point averages, credits, community service, and job hours, along with punctuality and attendance. Acting Director Dominique McCartney.
We are still requiring that our children obtain 4 BJCs. However, with a D-Pass for the general option. However, math and language, English language, are mandatory, and the student can bring in any other 2. So they can do any other 2 BJCs for the 4 BJCs. We want to keep the fact that students must have a cumulative of a 2-point GPA. The 27 credit hours that was required in the previous program has been removed because the Commission recognized that we were penalizing children twice.
And as for the third option, the Acting Education Director says,
our honors pathway. In this option, students must have math, language, and science BJC along with another subject. They must have a 3-point GPA, cumulative GPA. They must participate in leadership in some way. They should participate in 3 extracurricular activities. They should have 3 BGCSEs with C, or an SAT score of 1,000, or an ACT score of 20. And so we want all of our children who can access the Bahamas High School Diploma to be able to do so with these 3 options.
Meantime, Opposition Leader Michael Pintard responding to the Prime Minister's budget communication, specifically about his comments on the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Megan Shepherd has the story.
During his budget communication in Parliament on Wednesday, Prime Minister Philip Davis stating that in due course he will make a detailed announcement as it relates to the Hawksbill Creek Agreement and the Grand Bahama Port Authority. While leader of the Free National Movement, Michael Pintard, says the relevant stakeholders must have a say in future decisions, including the 3 F&M parliamentarians who hold Grand Bahama seats in Parliament.
That this government ought to engage in a conversation with the residents of Grand Bahama, the licensees of the port. Obviously, they should be in conversation with the port, the industrials, all stakeholders in Grand Bahama about any contemplation that they have relative to GBPA.
Pintard says the F&M has made it very clear they have concerns regarding the quality of performance by the GBPA.
And we believe that we need investors in the Bahamas who particularly have regulatory responsibility. We need them to have more skin in the game.
He says there are a number of issues they are willing to discuss with stakeholders. Pintard also addressing an age-old concern for residents, the number of derelict buildings around the island, as the GBPA claims they face constraints in enforcing environmental laws because of the absence of bylaws.
The member for East Grand Bahama and myself and Romal Ferrer worked diligently at the direction of Dr. Minnis on the bylaws that we believe we had reached the point that it was ready to go. That is, the GBPA would have teeth so that they could demolish derelict buildings. They can act to repossess and we make a decision in terms of what happened with those buildings.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
And the Davis administration setting aside $15 million for its Golden Yolk Egg program. Berthany McDermott has the latest.
Launched in February, the Golden Yolk Project seeks to increase Bahamian egg production and slash the country's import bill by $12.5 million, according to Agriculture Minister Clay Sweeting. It came at a time when egg prices soared over the $7 mark. Today, prices have dropped more than 60%. Sweeting says the goal is to ramp up the production of eggs by the millions once the project is in full swing.
Once the full program is completed, we're looking at 28 million. That could continue as we invest more. So 28 million eggs nationally, per year, and New Providence would be roughly around $18 million, and the rest on the Family Islands.
The Davis administration has also set aside $15 million for the Golden Yolk program for the production of eggs in the Bahamas. Sweeting revealing as much during this week's press briefing today. He says this will result in the production of 6 new grow houses.
Currently, we have completed the renderings for the new feed mill building, and we are finalizing with the quantity surveyor as we speak to move ahead to get the facility built. So when the feed mill arrives in country, we can install it right away as we continue to complete and move forward with the Golden Yolk project.
Meanwhile, Sweeting says the response from farmers has been positive.
And this project, which will be carried out on 12 Family Islands, and not just New Providence, which would include Grand Bahama, Abaco, Bimini, Barry Islands, Andros, Eleuthera, Exuma, Cat Island, San Salvador, Long Island, Ragged Island, and Inagua.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as the $30+ trillion U.S. debt ceiling deal heads to the Senate. This as another Girl Storm fire in Guyana is under active investigation. Plus, Sustainability First puts a spotlight on the beauty of Bahamas National Trust parks when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. The Senate will stay in session until members approve a bipartisan bill to suspend the government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. The Republican-controlled House of Representatives voted 314 to 117 yesterday to send the legislation to the Senate, which must now enact the measure and get it to President Joe Biden's desk before the Monday, June 5th deadline.
At this point, any needless delay or any last-minute holdups would be an unnecessary and even dangerous risk. And any change to this bill that forces us to send it back to the House would be entirely unacceptable. It would almost guarantee default. So again, the Senate will stay in session until we send a bill avoiding default to the President's desk, and we will keep working until the job is done.
Amazon will pay more than $30 million to settle 2 federal lawsuits alleging the violation of users' privacy, including that of children. The violation that is happening through its Alexa voice assistant and its Ring doorbell cameras. The twin settlement this week with the Federal Trade Commission highlights claims that Amazon retained Ring videos and Alexa voice recordings, along with related geological information for years, in some cases without consent. Now to the region, as U.S. President Joe Biden says they are working with the Caribbean to keep the region safe. In his address to proclaim U.S. Caribbean American Heritage Month, Biden said in November 2022, they partnered with CARICOM to launch the Crime Gun Intelligence Unit and disrupt firearms trafficking in the region. He said they're also working to improve access to development financing and advance clean energy projects across the Caribbean to address the climate crisis. And finally, fire destroying another dormitory in Guyana, this time at the St. Angela Girls Hostel in Carasabai Village. The Guyana Fire and Rescue Services say they received reports around 4 a.m. Friday that everyone was evacuated from the building with no injuries. However, the building and its contents were destroyed. Investigations are said to be ongoing. This latest fire coming on the heels of the Medea Secondary School dormitory fire, which claimed the lives of 20 children. A teenage girl has since appeared in court on multiple murder charges. And now to our Sustainability First report. We take our spotlight to the Bahamas National Trust and the beauty of all its parks.
Bahamas First, putting sustainability first for our people and our environment. What's first for you and the planet comes first for us.
The Bahamas National Trust is hoping to get Bahamians more invested in conservation and caring for our environment through more frequent visits to our country's beautiful national parks. Executive Director of the BNT, Lakeisha Anderson-Roll, says you never truly get it until seeing it for yourself.
The only way you can truly appreciate the national parks is if you have the opportunity to visit and to learn not only about the history of the park, but why it was protected. We have been encouraging Bahamians across the country, especially this year, to support and visit national parks. Is going to be free to the Bahamian public on national holidays.
But conservation and experiencing the parks isn't only for adults. The executive director encourages regular family outings at national parks.
The BNT, we are merely the caretakers, but we do this on behalf of the Bahamian public. So please visit. There's so many opportunities not only to learn, but to experience nature at these special places. And so we want to encourage Bahamians, get up out of your bed on the weekends and take time with your families to visit these unique spaces. We have 32 national parks spread across 10 islands. There's no reason why you should not be visiting them at any opportunity.
Reporting for Our News and reminding you to put sustainability first, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Still to come in Our News, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was June 1st and the 1946 conversion of Windsor Field. And then in Our News at 7:30, sexual and physical abuse accusations lands a stepfather before a judge today. More from inside the courtroom. And it's official. Forecasters are on alert for the start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. The story when Our News returns. Welcome back to Our News. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was June 1st. Take a look. On this day in Bahamian history in 1946, Windsor Field on New Providence reverted to civilian use as the British Royal Air Force withdrew from the Bahama Islands. The former airfield, which had been used to train pilots for delivery flights of new bombers during World War II, was unused since the end of hostilities. It was named after the Duke of Windsor, who had taken up residency on the island after abdicating as king. The newly developed Lynden Pindling International Airport now sits on the site. Then in 1973, the year of independence, Salathiel Harvey Thompson was appointed Commissioner of Police. He was the first Bahamian to serve in the position, replacing John Hindmarsh of the United Kingdom. A year later, in 1974, Central Bank of the Bahamas was established. The bank was to carry out independent monetary policy and financial sector supervisory functions entrusted upon the country after its independence from Great Britain. 31 years later, on this day in 2005, Wendy Craig was appointed governor of the central bank. She was the first and only female to serve in the post. She held office as governor until 2015 and was succeeded by John Roll. 5 years later, in 2020, as the Bahamas was in the midst of the global fight against COVID-19, the Ministry of Finance confirmed $48 million was being allocated to finance an expansion of government's unemployment assistance programs. It was to be administered by the National Insurance Board, and the first payments to be issued on July 17th. And finally, a year later, then Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis encouraged eligible Bahamians to get vaccinated, calling it, quote, the way out of this terrible pandemic.
Getting vaccinated can save your life. It can save the lives of your loved ones. The more we get vaccinated, the more we can further open our economy, creating more jobs and longer working hours.
To watch that historical recap again and for all of today's top stories, visit ournews.bs. That's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Atalia Hall. She's got the latest headlines. Atalia?
Behind bars, first tonight on Our News Live at 7:30. Following allegations of sexual and physical abuse, a man in his mid-40s is behind bars tonight. We have details from inside the courtroom. Plus, on the right track, Those words from a national security consultant in the fight against crime. Also, today is June 1st, which marks the official start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. A local meteorologist says preparation is the watchword this year, as forecasters predict a near normal season. And later, it's Pride Month for the LGBTQ community worldwide. Here at home, the U.S. hoisting the pride flag at the ambassador's residence.
But we all know the Bible say Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Residents are reacting. Our News Live at 7:30 is back in a moment. Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. Today marks the official start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. And if you haven't made the necessary preparations just yet, then officials are warning you to move with haste. Local meteorologists telling us preparation is key this season as forecasters predict a near normal season. More on this in a moment. But to now, a 46-year-old who is behind bars over allegations that he sexually and physically abused his stepdaughter. The man hasn't been named to avoid identifying the alleged victim. He appeared before Assistant Chief Magistrate Subasola Swain on charges of indecent assault, attempted unlawful sexual intercourse with a dependent, and cruelty to children. Prosecutors say the man first indecently assaulted his wife's daughter in 2017 when she was 7 years old. He allegedly indecently assaulted the 9-year-old child in 2019. Then in March of this year, he's accused of attempting to have sex with his 13-year-old stepdaughter. The man is accused of mistreating his stepdaughter between October 2017 and December 2018 and March 2023 and May 2023. He was not required to enter pleas to the charges. Bail was denied and he returns to court on October 23rd. Two men, ages 29 and 56-year-old, turned themselves into police in connection with that deadly hit-and-run accident we told you about on Wednesday. The pair went to the traffic police station accompanied by their attorney shortly before noon on Wednesday in connection with the deadly accident that occurred at the intersection of Carmichael Road and Faith Avenue. Police say back on May 29th, a man was attempting to cross the street when he was struck by a silver sports utility vehicle, which was traveling east on Carmichael Road. The victim was taken to hospital by EMS personnel where he died a day later. Investigations are continuing. As uncertainty looms over the state of the National Insurance Board Fund, Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkitis says the Prime Minister will make an announcement next week. It comes after the budget communication on Wednesday where nothing was mentioned about the state of the fund or a plan for the way forward. The Prime Minister did, however, say there will be no increase in taxes for Bahamians. Minister responsible Miles Rhoda says the National Insurance Fund would lose $95 million if there's no increase. Well, we put the question to Halkitis during this week's OPM press briefing.
NIB technically is not incorporated in the budget. So you wouldn't see a line item or any contribution to NIB in the budget. But it is a matter of concern, and it's on the minds of Bahamians. Prime Minister will address it when he needs it to be.
Next week, Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 7th of June.
The Grand Bahama Port Authority firing back at Prime Minister Philip Davis' comments during his budget communication on Wednesday. In a statement today, port officials say they agree that decisive action is required to continue to achieve the promise of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, and decisive action should include extending the real property tax exemption to all licensees. The PM said the governance model of the GBPA must change as there's been a prolonged decline in the Grand Bahamian economy, and the time has come for decisive action. But GBPA officials say there's an urgent need to promulgate the new Freeport bylaws that have been awaiting adoption for years, as well as the repeal of Section 68 of the EPPA, which subjects licensees and prospective investors to duplication of costly exercises and government delays. Now, for the full GBPA statement, you can visit ournews.bs or the Our News Facebook page. Another rainy day in the capital, and some more rain is expected in the forecast. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with a first look at weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia. Welcome, everybody, for a quick check on conditions outside our studios. Temperatures right now in the low 80s, 82 degrees, and the partly cloudy skies. The winds are out of the west-southwest at 6 miles per hour. Feels like temperature is at 81. Satellite and radar composite, a lot of moisture still streaming across us. We had some breaks in between the clouds, so we saw some clearing and some blue skies and some very warm temperatures, but we're still seeing some isolated showers and thunderstorms across the area. We are now watching an area in the Gulf of Mexico that's National Hurricane Center is giving about a 70% chance for formation. That's going to meander for the next day or two, and then it's going to eventually slide towards the south, encounter some upper level shear, and eventually weaken by the weekend. That's a quick look on conditions outside our studios and around the islands. A look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on our news, how prepared are you for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season? And an exclusive Our News interview, a local meteorologist says preparing for a hurricane ahead of time has shown positive results. And later, on the right track, a consultant at the Ministry of National Security says the country is moving in a positive direction in the fight against crime. Plus, self-affirmation, dignity, and equality. It's Pride Month, and here in the country, the U.S. hoisting the pride flag in honor of the annual observance has got residents reacting. That story and more is coming up when Our News returns.
At Doctors Hospital, our lamp just got brighter. The Loyalty Advantage membership program now has 3 unique plans to choose from. From Lamp Prepaid with free prime care visits and service line discounts, Lamp Insured with copay waivers and 0 upfront collections at the ER and inpatient services, or our new Lamp Access, a free plan that offers 10% off lab, pharmacy, and imaging. Lamp has a plan for everyone. To sign up, visit our website or give us a call. Doctors Hospital, trusted and best care now.
Today marks the start of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Tonight, a local meteorologist says over the years, hurricanes have intensified, and he's telling Bahamians now is the time to prepare.
The average now is 14.4 storms, 7.2 hurricanes, and 4.2, which means that's a definite rise in hurricanes.
Meteorologist and author Wayne Neely says more and more storms are appearing each hurricane season, adding that Bahamians should not take these storms lightly.
Grand Bahama, Abaco, and Andros are always in the top 10. Most of those islands are big. They are the bigger landmass in the Bahamas. New Providence is pretty small, and New Providence on the list right now is number 52.
A below-level hurricane season is predicted with 13 storms anticipated, 6 of which may become major hurricanes. But instead of being afraid of storms, he says, the best thing to do is to prepare ahead of time. The first step, he says, is to begin purchasing food.
If you have leaky roofs that need to be repaired, if you have windows that need to be repaired, those it may sound crazy, but those are the first thing that's going to be impacted by the strong winds of the hurricane. So a lot of people don't think about hurricane insurance. Prior to Dorian, most persons didn't really take hurricanes seriously in the Bahamas. But I think we as a nation saw the impact of a major hurricane that I've been talking about for years, and that's the destructiveness of hurricanes and their damage potential.
Neely says it's important for people to listen to information about storms from reputable news agencies in the country and the Bahamas Department of Meteorology.
The average person doesn't know what upper level trough is or what a high pressure system is going to do. What they want to know is it going to rain, how much rain, how strong the winds are going to be, how will that impact their homes.
The government has renegotiated the terms of the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility. That's according to Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkitis, who says this will put Bahamians in a better place to receive a payout if needed.
There's a history with that. There's been, since over the years, in recent years, there's been a restructuring of the policy. So now that we have a better chance of getting a payout. In previous years, we would pay religiously, we'd get hit by disasters and we wouldn't qualify. We had a difficulty with that. We sat down with them, we renegotiated, and so now we're in a better position. So if a hurricane hits, the hurricane in terms of wind damage or flood damage hits a portion of the country, we're eligible for payout.
Back in 2017, former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis slammed the former Christie administration for failing to pay the annual $900,000 CCRIF payment. At the time, he said it cost the country more than $32 million in potential insurance payouts from Hurricane Matthew. After Hurricane Dorian devastated parts of Abaco and Grand Bahama, CCRIF paid out almost $13 million to government after the hurricane insurance policy for the northern region was activated. Despite the loan facility, Halkida says the plan is to build for resilience and to ensure the government is in a position to respond if necessary. During the Davis administration budget communication last year, funds were allocated for consultancy services within several government agencies. And 1 year later, with the 2023-2024 budget communication released yesterday, have those consultancy services been yielding results? We posed the question to consultant in the Ministry of National Security, Dr. Carlos Reed, who responded this way.
I believe so, but we did not get where we are overnight. And there's no quick fix of the situation. If we study this situation like I have, all over the world, particularly in the Caribbean countries, we are facing the same situation. They just had a conference down in Trinidad where ministers of national security came together to try to exchange ideas on how to deal with this situation, because this is not something that is just isolated to the Bahamas, but I believe that all of us face it. I believe that in the long run, we're going to see some results.
However, Dr. Reed says he believes they are on the right track.
One of the things that we're looking at is how do we fix like the custodian system that we have. We know that BDOX for the years has been producing a lot of criminals, and we're trying to find ways of how we fix that. In short order, we can see the Ministry of National Security roll out a parole program. In the past, persons been being released early from prison because of good behavior, but there's no way to monitor and nothing to hold over their head, if we could use that term. But with the parole system, when you come out of prison, you come out early, you're going to be held responsible for your crime if you continue down that road.
Residents are sounding off on the hoisting of the pride flag today at the U.S. Ambassador's residence and the U.S. Embassy office, with some calling it into question. Our Joshua Williams reports.
With June 1st marking the start of Pride Month for the LGBTQ+ community internationally, U.S. Chargé d'Affaires Usha Pitts hoisting the pride flag at the U.S. Ambassador's residence. The flag was also hoisted at the U.S. Embassy office on Queen Street. These residents disagree with the move.
My point is this: they're raising a flag for Pride Month, but do they raise a flag for any other section of the community? I'd leave it as that.
We don't need that. It's being pressured on us because it's happening everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's all about that. So I feel like we got to put God first.
This resident questions the validity of the Bahamas' status as a Christian nation.
Now, if we are, then what is this? If we are not, then why we label ourselves so? You see what I'm saying? So that's the question. The Christian Council, are we a Christian nation? Let's hear you all on that.
In a Facebook post, Executive Director for the Bahamas Organization of LGBTI Affairs, Alexis DeMarco, shared her desire to see Bahamians open their hearts symbolically and legislatively to include its members as equal in our society. Dexter Knowles says he used to oppose the movement, but has learned to let individuals live their lives.
That's just how it's going to be. If we want to move forward as a country, we need to be able to be more inclusive and evolve into a better society. I just think we should move forward, stop hating on people just because we don't like what they do, but let them live their life. What am I going to do? Kill them for it? That doesn't make no logical sense to me.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Joshua Williams.
When Our News comes back from the break, maintaining law and order. In just a few hours, laborers across the country will march together in solidarity in the annual Sir Randall Fox Labor Day Parade.
Christian Robinson is back like he never left. The 2023 NBA Finals begin, and we give you a final sneak peek of our interview with the Bahamian martial artist in Japan. You definitely want to hang around for this one. Our Sports is up next.
Another gloomy day in the capital, and there's some more rain expected in the forecast for the Labor Day holiday. Greg is back with your extended weather when Our News returns. Stay with us. Our News. Welcome back. The Royal Bahamas Police Force reminding the public to remain vigilant and maintain law and order this Labor Day weekend. As the workforce gears up to celebrate at the annual Sir Randall Fox Labor Day Parade, Assistant Commissioner of Police Shivago Dames advises on the temporary road closures beginning at 7 a.m. until the passing of the parade.
East Street between Wolf Road and Bay Street. Bay Street between East Street and Navy Lion Road. Navy Lion Road between Bay and Marlborough Street. Marlborough Street between Navy Lion Road and West Bay Street. West Bay Street between Marlborough Street and Chippenham Road. Additionally, from 7 a.m. until the parade passes, no vehicle will be permitted to park on the following streets on both sides. East Street between Wolf Road and Bay Street. Bay Street between East Street and Navy Lion Road. Navy Lion Road between Bay and Marlborough Street. Marlborough Street between Navy Lion Road and West Bay Street. West Bay Street between Marlborough Street and Chippenham Road.
He's also reminding spectators that weapons, glass bottles, fireworks, and other items that threaten public safety are banned from the parade route. Officer in charge of the Traffic Division, Chief Superintendent of Police David Lockhart, also reminding the public of the importance of following rules of the road.
I always say, if you drink, don't drive, and if you drive, don't drink. There's nothing wrong that if you must drink, that you find a designated driver who is able to facilitate your transport from point A to point B. One of the things happening also tomorrow is the Junkanoo Parade, which starts at 11 a.m. Until the completion of it. There are 6 Junkanoo groups that will be participating in the Labor Day Junkanoo, and they will parade from East Street to George Street. And once they reach George Street, then they will disperse.
Today's sports update is sponsored by Michelob Ultra, distributed in the Bahamas by Jimmy's Wines and Spirits.
Christian Robinson is excelling in the minors already, and the NBA 2023 finals are here. Here's Tej Adderley with a check on sports. Tej?
Thanks, Natalia. We reported earlier this week about Christian Robinson's reinstatement to professional baseball. He's hitting the ball like he never left. Christian Robinson has been tearing the lid off the ball in his return to the minors after a 3-year hiatus. The Arizona Diamondbacks prospect went 2 for 4 with a stolen base in his first game with the single-A Visalia Rawhide. He followed that up with another 2 for 4 night, this time with a home run last night. If Robinson can continue to hit like this, he'll be in Double-A soon, and if he can hit anywhere near as good there, he will be in the major leagues. Love an amazing comeback. Speaking of back, the Miami Heat returned to the NBA Finals, this time against the Denver Nuggets. The 2023 NBA Finals are set to begin tonight. The Miami Heat are in the finals for the first time since 2020, playing the Denver Nuggets, who are in their first ever finals. The Heat are led by wing Jimmy Butler, who's averaging 28 points, 7 rebounds, and almost 6 assists per game. Bam Adebayo and undrafted players Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson are also expected to make major contributions to Miami's efforts. They'll have their hands full with Denver's Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. The 2-time MVP, Jokic is averaging a triple-double with 29 points in the postseason, while Murray is fully recovered from his torn ACL 2 years ago, scoring 27 points per game in the postseason, a full 7 points over his season average. Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope will also be key contributors for Denver. I'm Tej Adderley for Our Sports. Have an amazing extended holiday weekend.
Cloudy skies around the islands today with some off and on showers. Meteorologist Greg Thompson has the full details on what type of weather you can expect for the holiday weekend. Stay with us. Another rainy day in the capital, and more rain is expected as we approach the Labor Day holiday. While Greg is back in the Weather Center with a look at your extended weather forecast. Greg?
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia. Welcome back, everybody, for our final check at weather. Of course, we are watching the tropics. Today is June 1st. It begins the official Atlantic 2023 hurricane season. And we are tracking a system out there in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico that the National Hurricane Center is giving a high chance, 70%, for formation over the next, possibly the next 2 or 3 days. But we expect the system to encounter some upper level shear as it meanders across the Gulf of Mexico and then drifts towards the western tip of Cuba, over the next several days. In the meantime, though, we still have that moisture plume streaking across the area from the western Caribbean, still keeping us cloudy. We had some breaks earlier today, so we saw some blue skies across the northwest Bahamas. More showers and isolated thunderstorms in the forecast as the system continues to stay with us. As I said, the National Hurricane Center giving this system a high chance for formation in the Gulf of Mexico, and if it does form, it could get that first name, but we expect upper level shearing to dissipate a lot of the thunderstorm activity as the system drifts towards the south. Future forecast showing the moisture in place across the Bahamas. That will continue through tomorrow with some isolated showers and thunderstorms in the forecast. I think the bulk of it should be in the central and southeast Bahamas. More blue skies expected for us tomorrow. And then by Saturday, we still get a couple isolated showers, and that system in the Gulf of Mexico is expected to weaken and become a remnant low. Boating forecast for the northwest and central Bahamas. The winds will be out of the south to southwest, 10 to 15 knot, seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. Your high tide was at 6:42 this evening. For the southeast Bahamas, southeast to southerly flow, 10 to 15 knots, seas running 2 to 4 feet. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, we'll keep some showers in the forecast Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but by early next week, we expect conditions to be improving, and those temperatures are going to get real hot. They will approach the 90-degree mark during the daytime, mid-70s during the nighttime. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
All right, thanks so much, Greg. And with that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire news team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.